All right, so the first table that we're going to start with is the ingredient table. The scenario at this table says everyone has measured all of their ingredients. Did they leave the ingredient table okay? If no, list the 3 ways the students didn't leave the ingredient table correctly. First of all, we noticed that the students spilled a lot of ingredient around the actual ingredient container. When we measure, we really want to make sure that we're measuring over the container, so that way if any does fall over or that we level off, that it's going to go right back into the container and not fall onto the table and make a mess. The second thing at this station was that they left measuring equipment. We find measuring equipment every single lab at the ingredient table. It doesn't really matter so much for your hour, but who it affects is the people who come in after you, because then they're missing a liquid measuring cup, they're missing a third dry cup, they're missing their spoons. We got to make sure that everything we bring up with us, we bring back with us. The other thing is your ingredient or your recipes left up at the ingredient table. You got to make sure, again, anything you bring up goes back to you with your kitchen. Number 1, we had 3 things happening in it. First thing that happened in it was our clean dishes scenario. This student is washing dishes and putting them away in the cupboard. Were the dishes ready to be put away? If no, what should they have done first? As we look around, we start to notice some dirty dishes that are in the cupboard. This is a measuring cup that I actually saved from my first year of teaching that was put away extremely dirty. Everything's kind of dried on, not going to come off anymore. So I save it just for this lab. But this just kind of shows you that when things are put away dirty, it's going to leave it not so nice for the next kitchen. The next thing in this kitchen, kind of along the lines of washing dishes, was that they put dishes away with kind of a drink still left in it. We got to make sure that everything is washed, dried, and put away. We also want to make sure that our dishes, this one looks like the student washed it, but unfortunately they left a bunch of water on it, which tells me they didn't dry it. So make sure that you're also drying the dishes. That makes a big difference as well for the next team coming in. The second thing that was wrong in this kitchen was a spilled ingredient. A student spilled an ingredient, which happens all the time. If you spill an ingredient, do not worry about it. Just grab something to clean it up, either a bowl or the garbage can, or if it's on the floor, you might need a broom or a rag if it's something liquid. And just make sure you kind of clean it up. Basically, that's all that I ask, is that if you spill something, you're kind of in charge of cleaning it up. Once we clean it up, you can throw it away or throw away the garbage, whatever you have going on. The last thing in this kitchen was the toaster. This was an electrical appliance that had metal in it. We never want to put metal into any kind of electrical appliance, especially a toaster. That can cause somebody to get shocked and get electrocuted, and we don't want to do that. So keep it out of your toasters and out of your electrical appliances. Station number 2 started with another scenario. It was the cutting scenario. It said this student is getting ready to measure 2 tablespoons of butter or margarine. Are they using the correct equipment to cut this ingredient? If no, what were they missing, or what should they be using? So their setup so far looked okay. They have a knife, they have the butter. However, what they were missing was a cutting board. Anytime we're using knives, we should be cutting on a cutting board. It's not only going to save your counters, but it's also going to be a nice space for you to safely cut your ingredient on. The second thing happening in this kitchen was inside of the microwave. We had 2 things kind of going on, plastic and metal in the microwave. We need to make sure that we never put plastic in the microwave. One of 2 things happens. Number 1, it can melt. A lot of the plastics we have in class are kind of cheaply made, and if they get too hot, they will melt right through. And this happened my first year here. A student, they were melting some butter and it melted right through. Got all over their microwave, caused them to clean their microwave for the whole hour. So we don't want to put plastic in the microwave because it will melt. The other reason is that it can actually, when plastic heats up, it can release different toxins into your food or into your drinks or whatever you're heating up that they say could cause cancer. So we never want to put plastic in the microwave at school. The other thing is metal. Metal in microwaves can either cause your microwave to short out or it can start fires. So metal also does not go in the microwave. The only thing we put into the microwave is glass. Glass is okay, and that's what you should use to melt things or to heat things up. Third thing that was wrong in this kitchen was that we had some hot pans right off of the oven, and they were using them to cool down with a paper towel and with a dish rag. Those are big no-nos. We do not want to use either of these. These are used to wash dishes, and these are used to dry your hands. What they should have been using were what we call pot holders. Pot holders lay on the counter. They can lay on your tables. These are perfect for putting your equipment on so that it can cool down and it's not going to hurt your counters or burn through anything. So that was kitchen number 2. Kitchen number 3 started with some open cupboards. We had an upper cupboard that was open, which can be unsafe because you can hit your head on it, which doesn't feel good. We also had some open cupboards as well. Open cupboards, same thing. If you hit them, it does not feel well. So we want to make sure that when we open a cupboard or a drawer, we grab out what we need and then we shut the drawer. That way we're not going to have somebody accidentally run into it or hit it and things like that. Second thing that was happening in this kitchen was flammable items on the stove. This is really scary. This kind of stuff we do not want on top of the stove. It needs to be off of the stove. Make sure things like paper towels, your rags shouldn't be on top of the stove unless it's being used to wipe it down. The third thing in this kitchen was happening in the sink. They were washing one of our big chef's knives with a bunch of other dishes, which is okay. But what was not okay is that if this was in the sink, maybe I got done cutting with it, and I throw it into the sink, and then all of a sudden my dishwasher comes along and reaches in, now they have the potential of not knowing it's in there and cutting themselves. So whenever we have these big knives, the best thing to do is when you're finished cutting with it, to set it next to your sink. That way, when your dishwasher is ready and aware that they're going to be washing it, they can grab it and do their thing and wash it. One thing when we do use these big knives, make sure that you're washing, drying, and returning them up to the ingredient counter, because at the end of the hour I have to count them and make sure we have all of them back. Station 4 had another scenario added. It was our oven scenario. It says this student is getting ready to take this baking dish out of the oven. It is hot. Are they using the correct equipment to get the baking dish out of the oven? If no, list what they should be using. And as we look in the oven, we notice that they are using our normal rags that we use to wash dishes. These are not used in the oven. They are simply used to wash dishes. What this student should have been using would be our oven mitts. And when we open up our drawer, we have our oven mitts. These are great because they protect your hands almost like a pair of gloves. They're going to protect your hands from the heat in the oven, and they're also going to protect up your arm. So that way when I reach in to grab something, my arms are going to be protected. When I take a hot dish out of the oven, it should always go onto one of our pot holders. That way we will have a nice, safe area for our pan to cool down on. The second item in this kitchen were some forks that were left on the floor. Maybe they fell out of somebody's hands. We can't have forks on the floor. Number one, somebody could, trip on them or fall over on them. Another thing that could happen is that we don't want to use the 5-second rule. A lot of times I hear students drop things on the floor and they're like, oh, 5-second rule. Unfortunately, these floors get really dirty and we do not want to do the 5-second rule. If something falls on the floor, simply hand it to your dishwasher, have them quick wash it, and then use it again. But don't use things that fall on the floor here at school. The third thing in kitchen number 4 was that we had some broken glass extremely close to food. If glass ever breaks, you do need to alert me right away so that I can kind of see, did it break by food? Did it break onto the floor? So that I can see, like in this case, if a glass broke this close to food, this food would need to be thrown away because we don't know if a little bit of glass got in here and we wouldn't want to take that chance. If a glass breaks onto the floor and it doesn't affect any of your food that's up above, then we're okay and we'll just sweep it up and get rid of it. But anytime glass does break, I do need to be alerted about that so I can figure out how we're going to take care of it. Let's head to kitchen 5. Kitchen 5 had another scenario. It was our electric hand mixer scenario. It says this student is getting ready to plug in the electric hand mixer. Is it ready to be plugged in? If no, what should they do first? As we look at the mixer, this is kind of a tricky one, but what's wrong is that they actually have the electric hand mixer in the on position. If I would go ahead and plug this in, the beaters would immediately start spinning, which could be dangerous if my fingers were in the way or if another student was in the way or maybe somebody's hair was in the way, and it could cause a big problem. What we always want to make sure that we do is that we have the mixer off, and then we can plug it in, and then we are in control of how quickly the speed goes. The second item in this kitchen was our saucepan had the handle hanging over the edge. This is scary if somebody is walking by it and maybe not paying attention or somebody backs into it. If they hit this, it has the potential of falling on the floor. This happened to me my first year with a group of 6th graders making fried rice. The water was boiling, somebody accidentally backed into it, and the whole pan went on the floor, causing hot water to go all over. Luckily, nobody got hurt. But it was still a really super close call. When we have pans on the stove, we want to make sure that the pan handles are either facing the back or facing off to the side. Never over the edge. Always inside, so that if somebody would back into the oven, they're going to hit this part and not the pan. Okay, so what's going on here in this situation is that we have the possibility of cross-contamination happening. We have raw meat and raw kind of juices from the meat and the blood close to something that is raw, like an apple. When we are using anything like raw vegetables, raw fruits, raw meat, there's kind of an order you want to cook in. So let's say we're making a chicken Caesar salad. First of all, you would want to cut all of your vegetables first. So your lettuce, your tomatoes, whatever's all going to be on your salad. Any of those raw kind of veggies, we would cut those first. Once those are cut, we'll get them into our bowl. Next, I would start with my chicken. Cut up my chicken, and then I would cook my chicken on the stove. That way, my cutting board, if there was raw meat juices on here, my next step would be to wash it before anything else raw went on here. Just want to make sure that we're always kind of doing that correctly so that we do not get cross-contamination. Kitchen 6 had another scenario. It was our washing dishes scenario. It says the dishwasher is getting ready to wash the dishes in the wash tub. Do they have everything in their wash tub to correctly wash these dishes? If no, what are they missing? And when we look in here, it's a little bit tricky to tell because, I mean, they have dishes. That's okay. They have a tub. They have warm water. They have a scrubby brush. But what was missing was our soap. And one good rule of thumb to use with the soap so that you don't use too much is that I like to just tilt it over and count to 3. 1, 2, 3. That is more than enough soap for you to wash your dishes and to get some really good suds and to really be able to get everything clean that you need to. If your dish tub ever gets super dirty, dump it out and kind of start that process over again. The second thing happening in this kitchen is that we had metal in a saucepan. What's going to happen when the metal heats up and the food heats up, your spoon is also going to heat up, which could potentially cause you to burn your fingers. So what we want to use whenever we're heating on the stove is we want to actually use plastic or wood. Wood's great. It's not going to heat up. It's going to be a very good tool for you to use. And things with plastic handles, even though this still has metal on it, it has a plastic handle, which is going to help it from heating up and causing you to get burned. The last thing in this kitchen is kind of like the cross-contamination in a way, but it's having raw fruit, basically food in general, next to household cleaners and different things like that. We want to always make sure that our food is kept away from things like this. This kind of stuff should either be under your sink where it's not going to be close to a food that you're going to eat, or in a separate space in your house altogether. These types of things we would not want to have by something that we were going to eat because you could get sick from the different cleaners and products that are in here. Our last station was Station 7. This station kind of represented what the end of a lab would look like. Cleanup scenario is it's the end of the class and this kitchen is getting ready to be checked by Mrs. Stoll. Is the kitchen ready to be checked to leave? If no, what still needs to be cleaned up? And there's a couple things going wrong here. Number one, we have our towels, our dish towels still in the sink and hanging on the sink. We got to make sure that these are back into the dirty dish towel basket so that they can be washed for the next group. Paper towels are another thing that we find quite a bit in kitchens. We got to make sure that these are just thrown away. If you're done with it, just throw away all garbage. On the floors, we also had some stuff going on. We had paper left on the floor. On the other side of the kitchen, we had marshmallows left on the floor. All of that stuff needs to be cleaned up before you leave. We can't have food on the floor. We can't have paper, garbage on the floor. That's not fair to the custodians. It's not fair to us cleaning up. It's really got to be clean floors. If you ever need a broom, there's always going to be a broom next to the refrigerator or somewhere in class that you can use to clean up those messes. The last thing happening in this kitchen was flammable items on the stove and near the stove. This is probably one of the scariest things I see when I'm teaching is flammable stuff by the stove. Even if burners are off, it is not good practice to keep stuff that's flammable on the oven. You don't know if somebody could actually bump a burner or if it was still hot or if it somehow was on. This kind of stuff is extremely flammable. So we always want to keep it away from the stove. And those are your 7 labs.